Matt, I just want to say I love your Halloween 3 masks. Uh,
Excellent, excellent. Well, I love hearing that, of course. That's a great way to lead off, if ever there was one. We're in good company here, obviously. Gentlemen, welcome to Halloween Daily, where every day is Halloween. And I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and hang out today.
Sure.
Thank you for having us.
I watched your latest film, The Inheritance, last night, and I really enjoyed it. And it's a lot of fun. It's in this tradition, I feel like, of almost its own subgenre, kind of inheritance themed films where there's a patriarch that's dying, or in some cases has died. And the family, somewhat estranged, comes together, and there's usually some other unexpected death that occurs. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about how this story originated for you guys, and for each of you, what made you want to bring your spin to this subgenre, we'll say, of inheritance movies.
Yeah. So back in 2018 when we first wrote the screenplay, um, my go-to composer and I, John Jasinski, we were kind of lamenting the fact that we were all suffering through Donald Trump's first term in office. And we thought, wouldn't it be fun if you could stick the Trump family inside a haunted house? And that was really kind of the, I guess, kernel of the idea. And I'm just such a big lover of the Vincent Price movie, The House on Haunted Hill. And I love the kind of Agatha Christie tone to it and the ensemble and the one night. And I always thought, it's been at the time, it had been almost 20 years since the Dark Castle remake of it. I was like, it feels like it's time to do something like that again. And, uh, and so that was kind of, I guess, the structure and framework. And then with Chris, we kind of, started figuring out thematically what we wanted the movie to be and say. And we kind of landed on this meditation of family versus greed. And that was really kind of, I think, the entry point into the story for us.
Yeah, I think the neat thing whenever we sit down and write, we're always looking at contrast too between characters. And so, Hannah in our film, she's this fresh-faced, idealist, who's been brought into this family, the Abernathy family, and it's a whole different world. This extremely 1% haughty, rich family. And for me, the interesting thing is just watching how she's able to balance as a regular person. She's one of these, for us, we love to have like a Hitchcock film, the regular person who's brought into a situation beyond their control, out of their control, and how do they survive that? And so love seeing that kind of dynamic and being able to include that in this, interesting world that not a lot of people get a chance to see. And so, for us, I think that's one of the neat things is to be able to take these great themes like greed, like power, and to be able to put that to how do regular people, work with that, and how do they survive that when they're in those kinds of incredible family dynamics.
And you mentioned, some of your genre influences as you were both describing that, and I felt some of that old school approach, like the Agatha Christie and some of the old whodunits that you mentioned, and also in how Alejandro shot, the entity, the demon, I guess, and it being, so much in shadow and so much that you're not seeing throughout so much of the film, which I really enjoy, because we don't in today's films, so much of it is in your face. It was kind of nice to have a lot of it literally in shadow and done old school. I was even thinking back to like Nosferatu and some of those shots. Was this how you guys were envisioning it as you were writing it, as to be shot like that, or was that more more?
Yeah, I no, I'm really glad you said that because I'm a big fan of the Spielberg motto of save the shark until you absolutely have to show it.
Yeah.
And so we that was written into the script that way. And I remember very early on because we wrote the screenplay on spec. And it ended up becoming it was selected for the 2018 Blood List, the best horror scripts of the year. And but I remember when we were developing it, our old manager, who was giving the initial notes on it, said,
Former, I think former is better than old because we're not talking about ages.
"That's true." Our first manager, not our current manager, but he gave a note where he was like, why aren't you guys showing the monster? You need to show the monster, 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 monster. And we were like, we really feel pretty strongly that this is the right way to do it, and at least for this story, you know. And I'm really glad to hear that you felt the same.
Yeah. It definitely has a very old school, like Joe was talking about, that Agatha Christie. It feels very classy to me when I watch the film. It just feels very classy and very much refined. It doesn't. It's not in your face horror. It really is a whole different type of style that I think that Alejandro really brought to bear for the project.
And I mean, again, we don't have to reveal too much, but I mean, it does deal with a demon, the demon of greed. It's mentioned in here, and I was curious how much research you guys did into that element of it, the mythology that is hit upon in the film.
One of the first projects that Chris and I had some success with as writers in Los Angeles was an Exorcist TV show that was set up with Will Smith's company in the mid 2010s. Never got made, sadly, but it was our kind of first big win as screenwriters. And so we did a plethora of research on demons, and we were working with another writer who had like an actual grimoire, and so we had plenty of, I guess, like leftover research from that we were able to kind of uh speak to, but really truly it was more about finding a way to tie a supernatural entity in with the theme that we were trying to hit on, and trying to make that feel organic to that world and make it make sense. And so that was really the starting point. It was we had all these ideas from a previous TV show, and we had a thematic need, and it was just about marrying those two things.
Yeah, I mean, research is just so crucial, I think, to be effective screenwriters. Because having that basis in reality, because there's going to be someone who's a huge fan of demonology who's going to start going through and say, that's incredibly impossible, or that's not the right name, or anything like that. So we felt like that kind of accuracy is just so crucial for any project that you're ever writing that opens itself up to an audience.
Yeah, when we did a rewrite on a movie called The Locksmith a couple of years ago, Chris and I did a lot of YouTube watching of how to pick locks, just to make sure that that stuff made sense.
Awesome. I love it. Well, like you said, research, it makes all the difference in the world. And people are going to call you out on it if somebody out there in this day and age is absolutely going to call you out on it if you don't.
No, for sure, for sure.
And I'm curious, you guys as co-writers on these projects, and maybe you've been asked this before, but I'm always just curious what the relationship is, like the writing process. Like, is it dividing sections, or do one of you concentrate on something like dialogue while one of you is thinking more about the plot, or how does that tend to work with you guys?
Usually what we do is Chris and I will spend a lot of time brainstorming. We'll do a lot of conversations where we're just what we call blue skying, like throw lots of ideas out there, and until we really get like a strong outline and shape of the movie. And once we kind of figure out what that looks like, then because I'm a director too, so I'm a little bit more anal retentive with how I want to see scenes laid out initially. I don't know what other way to say it.
No, that's about right. Yeah,
that's about right.
I don't know about saying anal retentive. I mean, but keep going.
But I have a very specific idea of kind of usually when we write these things, whether I'm attached to director or we bring in another filmmaker, when we usually write them, it's with an eye for, like, if we had to make this ourselves, like, Joe's gonna go direct it, right? And so that's usually the starting point. So I'll usually take a first stab at the scene, and then we just start passing it back and forth. And over the course of several weeks, we'll get a draft. And once we have that draft, then Chris and I get on a Zoom like this, because we've never lived in the same city. I live in Los Angeles. Chris is in Phoenix. So we were using Zoom way before it was cool,
or necessary because of pandemic.
Yeah, right. That's what I was trying to avoid saying. But And we go through it line by line and read it aloud and kind of discuss what our intentions were and why we want to keep something or why we should throw it away. And usually by the time we're done with that, between passing it back and forth in the initial kind of drafting phase and then our revisions, we usually have something that's more akin to like a second or third draft if it was a solo writer, just because we beat it up so much. And that's kind of been a process that's served us pretty well.
Yeah, I think and it's great. We do get a lot of feedback from a lot of colleagues, from everyone that we know who knows screenplays, and so I mean that's part of the process too. It's not just the writing part, the initial draft, but then it's all the rewriting that goes into this. And but it's a collaborative medium. Joe and I love working together. Like I like to say, he's my second wife. Sometimes he's my first. It depends on the time of day. But it's a great collaboration between the two of us. And the great thing is that when you read the screenplays, like Joe said, I mean, you really can see the scenes in your head because they're really, really strong. We're really excited when we're putting characters. Like no scene is wasted. Everything is there for a reason. Characters are in the dialogue. Everything is there for a reason to serve the overall story. We're very, very very specific about making sure that everything comes together, works together. It's the only way to make movies like this happen.
Awesome. Well, like I said, I love the latest film. Before we let you go for our last few minutes, if you'll indulge us, as you can see, every day is Halloween for us, and even though the calendar, as we're recording this, might say we just started summer, that doesn't matter. It's always Halloween for us in the brain anyway, and here at HDN. So, if I could ask you both, what's Halloween for you guys? Have you celebrated your whole lives? Do you celebrate now as adults? Do you have warm fuzzy memories growing up like we do?
Well, Chris does a haunted house.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, my son was born 2 days before Halloween, so for a kid's birthday, I did a little haunted house thing for his birthday, and then my wife's like, "Why don't you just keep this up, and we'll like let people in for trick or treating?"
Oh,
And
I
then
love
it
it.
grew to like at our peak, we had about 500 people would come through the through the haunted garage, as we called it. So yeah, I mean, Halloween is a big deal for us. Because it is such a great. I mean, it's just heck, it's free candy. I mean, how bad how bad of a holiday can it be when you're getting free candy, right?
Absolutely.
For me, my parents used to do that before I was born, but kind of the legend is there was a kid who came through their haunted house that they were doing, who accused them of putting a razor blade in the candy.
I
And
never
so
did
that was
that.
it. That was it. My dad was done. He never did it again. But we
Yeah.
had all these great decorations around the house when I was growing up, and Ghostbusters was and is my favorite movie. So like I just grew up loving supernatural stuff. I grew up in Connecticut, which is like kind of the intersection of Sleepy Hollow and Salem. So for me, it was like it was always there. I've always loved it. It was natural. I was going to become a horror kid, I think. But as an adult now, I turn it into like a 2 month season. Like Halloween starts September 1st for me and goes through October 31st. And and being out in LA, there's great haunted mazes and stuff. There's Universal Halloween Horror Nights. There's movies in the cemetery. I mean, there's so many fun things we do. I try to go to Monster Palooza and Son of Monster Palooza, and I try to go to the every 5 years they have these Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween anniversary conventions. I've been to the last couple of those, and so I really kind of eventize it. My wife and I even we go to South Pasadena the week of Halloween and take photos of my dog on the Laurie Strode stoop. So
Well,
you know,
don't forget also, I mean, I gotta say, Joe and Crystal, his wife, their costumes every year are fabulous. They're themed. Uh,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
always amazed because I'm like, I wish I was as cool as Joe and Crystal, me and my wife, to be able to pull off some of those great costumes they do.
Well,
So,
we always go to the Magic Castle at Halloween, which is this wonderful experience if you ever get to do it. And they always have like big theme parties, and you have to go in costume. And it's we've literally I feel like we've been doing it almost for 10 years now, aside from the pandemic years, and it's a real tradition. And then now in the last couple of years, my friends bought a house in Burbank, which is a huge trick-or-treating neighborhood. And so we're kind of following in Chris's footsteps, my parents' footsteps. My friend Dave and I are like slowly turning their driveway into a kind of haunted attraction. And we had hundreds and hundreds of people come through last year. Like we had a run on candy. He had to go run to CVS and buy more. Like it was crazy. But it was so much fun.
Awesome. Awesome. I love hearing all that. That's perfect. That's great. You're definitely our people for sure. Um, so for we always ask everybody before we let you go, your favorite Halloween costume that you've ever worn, and also your favorite Halloween candy or treat.
Oh my gosh, my favorite Halloween costume recently was probably my wife and I went as Chucky and Tiffany. That was pretty great because I very quickly found out how terrified people are of Chucky. As I was, I'm 6'2", so I'm a pretty big guy. So I was a very large Chucky. Uh, and I remember after going to the Magic Castle that night, we were walking to In-N-Out afterwards to get a cheeseburger. There was a security guard out front, and he was like, "No, no, 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 no." He's like, "You get away from me." So that was a pretty good one. I don't know. What about you, Chris?
Well, I mean, I think I look really good in my David Pumpkin suit. Uh, Super classy, but I gotta say, my most favorite Halloween costume moment was when my daughter was super young and she dressed up as Scooby-Doo, and I was Shaggy. And at one point, she like wandered away with like the other family we were trick-or-treating with, and I remember just being on my own around the corner, and I'm like looking around, and I'm like, Scooby-Doo, where are you? And then she was right around the corner. It was pretty hilarious. So,
That's
and
awesome.
Kit Kats.
Nice.
Kit
Excellent.
Kats are a good Halloween candy. Yes.
And Joe, did you name your favorite candy?
No, I don't think I would say so. Every year I have this like glass pumpkin in the house, and I fill it with Kit Kats and Reese's peanut butter cups because it's orange. So then it goes from being a glass pumpkin to an orange pumpkin. And I try to keep that filled the whole time. So I would say those two are probably my go-to.
And all the trick-or-treaters that come to Joe's apartment, they knock on the door, and Joe's handing out candy left and right. Oh, wait, nobody comes to his apartment.
No, that's why we go to Burbank to my friend Dave's house.
But
Right.
somehow that candy always disappears. I don't understand.
It's amazing. All the candy in the apartment still gets eaten.
The ghosts of Halloween candy just show up and
That's
somehow.
right.
Yeah,
That one.
there's rarely any leftovers at our house either, no matter how many trick-or-treaters do or don't come actually at our house.
Yeah, I would say one other thing, just I don't even know why I didn't think of this when you asked, but I've gotten really big into pumpkin carving.
Oh my gosh, of course, Joe, the pumpkins.
Yeah, I usually carve like one pumpkin a week during October. And they're usually pretty elaborate. I post them on my social media. You can go dig through on Instagram at Joe Russo Graham. But I'm that's now I feel like I have to keep one-upping myself, and I have to keep doing. I've done like Norman Bates. I've done the Headless Horseman. I mean all sorts of cool ones.
I'm
Yeah.
waiting for the scariest one of all. I'm waiting for him to do me as a pumpkin. All right, it hasn't happened yet. I don't know if it ever will. It might be too frightening for Joe to handle, honestly,
I don't know if I can look at it for a week.
because you don't look at it enough as it is, right?
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to be following along and seeing and looking for that one as well. But yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Well, again, both of you gentlemen, this has been awesome. It's been just a pleasure talking to you. And again, I love the movie The Inheritance.
Thank you.
It's out July 12th, and we highly recommend it. And instead of saying goodbye here at HDN, since every day is always Halloween for us, instead I just always say Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.